The Spin-off Podcast Network. AI wouldn't be possible without the internet, nor the internet without computers. Computers came from brilliant brains, and even they had to learn that fire was hot and water was wet. The world is constantly shifting, changing, evolving, and Daylight is an award-winning creative and technology studio that helps ambitious clients shift with it. Search daylight.nz to get in touch.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
The number one selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
What is the woke mind virus? Like, when you put it like that, yeah, I don't want it. Like, I just don't get what it's supposed to be.
Kia ora, I'm Gabi Lardies, staff writer at The Spin-off. Welcome to Behind the Story, where we go behind the scenes of a big article on The Spin-off from the week. Today, I'm talking to our press gallery reporter, Lyric Waiwiri-Smith, who is visiting from Wellington. On Tuesday, we published Lyric's story, A Vision of Two New Zealands, the War on Woke and a Hikoi for Trans Healthcare. It wraps together two things that happened on Sunday: a hikoi at Parliament in support of gender-affirming care for youth, and Winston Peters' State of the Nation speech, where he pledged his commitment to being anti-woke. I wanted to ask about the things she couldn't quite fit in the story and this bloody crusade on wokeness. Here's Lyric Waiwiri-Smith on Behind the Story. Hi, Lyric. Thanks so much for joining us. What a treat to have you here in person.
Hi, Gabby. I just got off a plane like an hour ago, so it is a treat to be here with you especially. That's no slight on Mad. I just love you.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. So on Sunday, you and hundreds of other people marched through the streets of Wellington to your stomping ground, Parliament, in support of gender-affirming healthcare, I believe. You took some really nice photos, which are on your story, and it looks quite lovely. Like, people are carrying banners, they've got flags, everyone's quite kind of close together. Is that an accurate representation of the vibe at the hikoi?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like any hikoi is equal parts quite joyous because you're with your community and you're all acting together on the cause that you all really care about. And so that visual people power, of course it's going to give you some joy. But then on the flip side, you're there because you disagree with something and you want to say something about it. So equal parts joyous and then angry, but then also hopeful. Yeah.
And I was wondering why you in particular were there. Were you there as a journo, or were you there as a person who happens to be a journo? And is that kind of this weird blurred line that you often find yourself in when you go to a protest that you might be reporting on?
I went because, well, part of me thinks that it's important when you see other people going through something that is unfair, that you throw your support behind them. And then on the other hand, I kind of feel like as a journalist, we have a duty to tell these stories, like I've, from communities who are sort of overlooked and a whole lot of misinformation exists about them. So we have a duty to talk to them and, get their stories out. When I worked for other outlets, you definitely couldn't go to a protest and be a journalist and also be a part of the protest. I need to check the spin-off guidelines on whether we're supposed to be doing that. But yeah, I think it was equal. Oops. It was, for me, like, I feel that it's important that we support the people whose voices aren't as loud. And that, for me, looks like going to a hikoi and then also being a journalist and writing about what happened. I think I hadn't promised a story when I went, but I knew that with photos and quotes, I would have something to offer to the editors and be like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's half written already. Why?
Yeah. I'm like, here's your story.
Yeah, here it is. Boop.
That's how it works. It just kind of magics itself.
Yeah. Just go somewhere and the words just come through like a magical
wholly
calling.
Inspired.
Yeah.
And then you're just like writing Shakespearean level things off the top of your head.
Yeah, making up new words, beautiful phrases.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the thing that the protest was quite specifically, I think, in response to, which is this Ministry of Health report that was released in November last year. And the findings of the report were they were a bit grey. They basically, I think, found that there wasn't really so much evidence in support of or like against the risks and benefit to puberty blockers for people with, say, gender dysphoria or trans people. And the report recommended kind of more hurdles to accessing that care and more restrictions. It's already like you can see the kind of political party lines that have been in support of that and not. But for the people who were at the protest on Sunday, what were their kind of arguments against this report?
Right, yeah. So this report, it was ordered by the government. So the Ministry of Health had to look into, I guess, what the benefits and risks, if there are any, are to administering puberty blockers to young people with gender, well, I think they kind of phrase it as gender identity issues, so gender dysphoria, trans kids. Puberty blockers, they're also used to treat things like endometriosis and certain cancers, and precocious puberty, so like young kids who hit puberty really early. But those experiences weren't a part of the report. It was just looking at using puberty blockers for gender-affirming healthcare. So in that sense, the advice sort of recommended that clinicians should exercise caution when prescribing puberty blockers, and also recommended that there should be, in their words, an interprofessional team offering a full range of supports to young people presenting with gender identity issues, which, that sounds like a good thing to set up support people who know how to, administer gender-affirming healthcare. But as one of the queer endurance and defiance leaders, that group organised the hikoi. As they pointed out, the ministry didn't actually have an idea of what that kind of interprofessional team looks like. So that's kind of a grey area. You can't advise something and then you don't really also have an idea of how it's supposed to look. So that gives that community a lot of anxiety because it's like, well, is that just going to look like the doctors and nurses who have let us down before? And then I think the fact that there was a public consultation called after the report, that I gather felt like kind of a kick in the guts because, I mean, can you imagine if there was a public consultation on if someone with cancer should be able to access, their treatment? So it's sort of like when so much misinformation already exists about trans people and you're opening up a public consultation on their healthcare, you can kind of guess that you're also opening that space up to a lot of people who have a lot of deeply anti-trans views and are quite misinformed. So, that doesn't feel fair. And yeah, it's sort of like there's not really, the government hasn't really offered a why as to, why this report was commissioned, why just trans kids. I think because there's been similar reports overseas, like the kind of controversial Cass review in the UK. So other reports have come out, and New Zealand, the rate of young people using puberty blockers for gender-affirming healthcare has also gone up over the years. So I guess the least cynical view is that the government just wants to, check if there needs to be safety measures put on a medicine that they don't really understand the long-term effects of. But in the same kind of vein, you'd argue that maybe a 9-year-old boy with precocious puberty, his body could change in the same way that trans children's bodies change after taking puberty blockers, and that child could feel a certain way about how his body looks now, but those experiences weren't taken into account. It was just, gender-affirming uses. So it feels pointed and it feels, for them, quite unfair.
Yeah, and you included one person who spoke at the rally's story. I think their name was...
Alice.
Alice, yeah. Was there other people at the rally who had similar stories to Alice?
Yeah, so they had about 8 speakers. Some of them, one of them was Benjamin Doyle from the Greens, the other was Elizabeth Kitty, former Greens, and then other, young trans people who spoke about their experiences. And, if you listen, what you find out is that actually there already are hurdles to accessing this kind of healthcare. And when you can't, it has an insanely deep effect on your self-esteem, your self-worth. It can lead to really horrible things like, self-harm, suicidal ideation, because you're essentially living in a body that's changing, and it's changing in a way that makes you feel deeply uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like, this isn't who I am. So those were the sort of stories shared from, it was young people at the forefront, and they were quite also some cynical kind of statements about not having a lot of faith in the government to do the right thing for them. And yeah, obviously an hour later, it became very clear that, we're at least a part of the coalition government stands on this.
And when you say young, how young are we talking? Because I noticed that, for instance, Winston Peters keeps on saying children in regards to this area, that we're giving puberty blockers to children. And I think when he says that, it makes it really easy to picture like a really young child, say 5. But are the trans people who are wanting to access this healthcare, are they a bit older than that? Like, what is the general age that they start to seek puberty blockers out?
I couldn't tell you that. I'm not too sure. It must be, around the puberty age of like pre-teens.
Yeah.
And then as you get like deeper into your teens, you sort of like you're in the full swing of puberty, like it's happening. So I guess at that point you definitely feel a rush to like, I need to, I really need this medication right now. And if you know, if like for Alice, she talked about it took her, I think, 2 years to access the medication. And in that time, her body had already changed, you know? And
yeah, 2 years can be...
Yeah, it's a long time.
Really critical over the puberty period.
When you need healthcare, like 2 years, honestly, unacceptable amount of time to be waiting for a medicine. Your life and your body changes so much, and you spend, I imagine, every day just being like, when are things going to change?
Yeah, it sounds like it was quite emotional, this event. Did
you
feel that it kind of tugged at your heart?
It actually was quite emotional because I just like, it's like, oh, I don't like hearing that people are suffering.
Yeah.
Sorry for my virtual signaling, but, you know. But I guess also going back to your question of how young these kids are, I seem to remember from the report they kind of focused in on 12 to 17-year-olds. I might have that wrong, but I think that's also the age group where use of puberty blockers has been on the rise for a bit, but is also now falling. But I think it's only over like 100 kids a year use this.
Wow,
so
that's such a small
number
of people.
In the grand scheme of things, like it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and it's getting so much attention for such a little thing that really has no impact on other people apart from yourself.
I mean, pretty much. I mean, like, who cares?
Yeah,
Do you really care? I don't know.
The people that do care, or one of the people that really seems to care, is a very charming statesman, Winston Peters, who on Sunday delivered his State of the Nation speech. And you weaved this in with the hikoi in your piece. And he pledged to continue his anti-woke agenda and continue fighting against the use of puberty blockers for children. He keeps on doing this thing where he courts these quite like hot button topics and narratives, including transphobia, obviously. You're in the press gallery, so you're quite close to him and you see him from day to day. Do you reckon that this kind of rhetoric that he uses is all like a political play to get a certain kind of vote, or does he really think these things?
Man, I would love to be in the mind of Winston Peters. I think that he is a politician and has been for a really long time. He's going to turn 80 next week. Yeah. Happy birthday, Winston. And I think he's been doing this for so long that he knows what a hot button issue is and how to like stoke the fires and appeal to certain demographics of society. He is a funny person to catch when, you know, because in the press gallery you have opportunities where you can just catch the MPs walking around, like on the bridge run before question time. He's always got a crowd of reporters coming up to him, and he's very, you know, loyal on his stances. And he's also, quite combative. So he's a hard person to challenge. When he's been going on about DEI as well, and I think when one of the staff reporters tried to challenge him on it, he was like, "I'm going to take you all to a classroom and educate you on what this means," and it's just stuff like that. So, you know.
So he runs hot, like in person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I feel like what you see is what you get, right? Like he is exactly what he is. No punches held back. He is self-assured, and he's the Deputy Prime Minister, so who are you to tell them what's up?
Yeah. I was also remembering that 2 years ago we published like a glossary of all his funny little sayings and all the words he uses that lots of people don't really know what they are.
Wait, what's your favorite?
Well, I love when he says sunshine.
I love when he's
waiting for the day that I might be called Sunshine.
You're my sunshine. I like when he calls someone like Jack Tamer Philadelphia lawyer.
Yeah.
So old school.
That is also really good. And one that's in the glossary and I did not know what it meant before.
Because it's so old school.
Yeah. He's never, or has he ever given us a definition of what he means when he says woke? Because he's really like waging a war on it, but I don't know exactly what he means by that. Or is it this sort of like nebulous area that he prefers to keep undefined?
I feel like I feel like after this week, you'd probably put a photo of Tamafa Paul in his definition of woke, right? Like, I feel like this week in particular, he has been the image of the anti-woke and she's been the image of the woke, whether that's a fair, label to put on her, but they kind of exist in these drastically different, like, political spheres. But woke, I would say keeping it undefined probably works in his favour, because then anyone who comes up against NZ First is woke, like you don't have to be, I don't really, like, do you think, I don't know, this is such a good question, like what actually is woke? I'm inclined to just believe that anyone who is woke is other people who don't agree with him, and anyone who is woke are the people who do agree with him. But woke is a word that has been thrown around a lot these days. Like even David Seymour in his State of the Nation in January said woke mind virus, which feels such an imported term. And I'm like, what is the woke mind virus? Like when you put it like that, yeah, I don't want it. Like, I just don't get what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Well, Elon Musk was also tweeting about the woke mind virus last year.
Do we have it?
There's a lot of borrowing going on with these terms.
Yeah, well, when he's just been in the US, so he could be.
Did he come back with the woke mind virus?
He came back with the anti-woke mind virus.
Yeah, he just got like the vaccine without even having the disease.
But is a vaccine woke?
Yeah,
wow.
I think a vaccine could be woke to winning.
Right. If it was a vaccine that only trans people could use, it would be woke, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in his mind. But his war on woke, I mean, he said that the party would keep fighting puberty blockers, which I don't really know what that's supposed to mean. I guess that kind of signals their intention to put some restrictions on access and fighting anyone who gets in his way. I mean, he's going to step down from being the Deputy Prime Minister in like 2 months. So part of me also thinks like he's carving out an identity for when election time comes as well. And also thinking about W. Manhire's piece at the start of this week, the Trump lads in New Zealand, there's obviously like a demographic that subscribes to the like idea of fearing woke.
Yeah, and at the moment, what Toby's piece highlighted as well is that demographic of people, men under 40, there was a huge overlap between the Trump supporters and ACT, people that voted ACT. So I wonder if Winnie is kind of trying to edge in on them and collect up a few votes from ACT for the next election.
Yeah, I think...
I mean, they're probably always trying to do that.
Oh, 100%.
Each other's demographic.
I mean, it's the same with the Greens and Te Party Māori and Labour. It's just a little whole bunch of swiping at each other's potential voters. There's definitely people in the country who even people, I've heard people be like, oh my God, this woke stuff, oh, I can't stand it. I'm like, but what does this mean to us? Like, what what is woke is someone who has always been treated like they're at the bottom of society, wanting, a good shot at life, like equal footing. Is that woke? I don't know. Is it woke to give people healthcare that will, help them feel better about their gender identity? I don't know. I feel like the anti-woke stance leaves no room for empathy. I don't know. Maybe I'm the woke one.
These things maybe shouldn't be considered woke because, as you say, until you put gender-affirming in front of healthcare, it's not woke.
Yeah.
So why should it be woke? It's healthcare.
Healthcare is such a huge topic, like a huge issue forever and always, especially right now. And it's like, I feel like we could all agree that we all deserve good access to healthcare that suits us. So why should we throw up a fuss when someone who's, I guess, they're an identity that we don't understand, treat them, we shouldn't, continue to treat them as an other, is what I've gathered.
I think that is a perfect takeaway.
Yeah.
And I'm going to thank you very much for coming on Behind the Story. And please come back soon.
I will come back soon, ?
Who wants to buy Lyric a flight?
If you support the spin-off and become a member, Lyric will get 1 free flight to Auckland every week to see Gabi.
Wow. That was Lyric Waiwiri-Smith on Behind the Story. Mad will be back next week with another spin-off writer and another spin-off yarn. Thanks for listening.
Kia ora koutou, this is Toby Manhire, host of the spin-off politics podcast Gone by Lunchtime. Join me with Ben Thomas and Annabelle Lee Mather for a special live pod event April the 9th in Auckland at Q Theatre. We'll have bells and whistles and animals and children and special guests all gathered to discuss the state of the coalition government halfway through the term. That's April 9, Q Theatre. Tickets are available now from thespinoff.co.nz/events.
The Spin-off Podcast Network.